Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted, an Unchained RPG review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm going to be doing part 2 of my first look and flip through of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Player's Handbook. So in my last video I had covered the first 5 chapters roughly, and today I'm going to pick up with chapter 6 and hopefully move through the entire remainder of the book. For your listening and viewing pleasure. So let's move on to, we'll flip to the quick look. So this is what we're talking about. Now this is the revised edition or expanded edition. Some people have said that this should be called 2.5, but that's not how it's addressed in the that's not how it's addressed in the book, and so I'm going to stick with the 2nd edition revised. So let's take a look at our PDF, and we're going to pick up with chapter 6, money and equipment. Now there's not that much that I want to focus on here because there are some minor changes here, but for the most part it's the same. Initial character funds. So here you have your equipment list, and it's a fairly complete list of items. So everything from your daily food and lodging, clothing, household provisioning, which is something I'm not quite used to seeing. So maybe that is an addition to first edition. Animals, which is another thing that I've never really focused on in first edition, but they have it here as well. Transportation was in the older edition, and so on. So we go into attack and harness, miscellaneous equipment. It just looks like it's a much more complete list of items. Now here we have armor, and you have some additional types of armor here that might have been more simplified previously. Let's go through here. Oh, I jumped way far. So we have our weapons. Sorry about that. I jumped farther than I thought. Yeah, I didn't want the descriptions. So we have our weapons. An arquebus. I'm assuming it's a kind of axe. I'm not really that familiar with it. So you have your battle axe, your blowguns, your various types of bows, and different types of arrows now are in this here. You have your basic club, different types of crossbows, and their quarrels are here as well with damage modifiers and such. Several footmen's weapons, horsemen's weapons, and so on. So, and then we continue on. Staff sling, which is, actually I think that's been around for a little bit in a couple of, I recall that in the basic. And then we go into descriptions of the various weapons. So like I said, money and equipment is maybe a few additional items thrown in there, and but everything else is roughly the same or not modified all that much. So here we have various armor ratings, and this is still using descending, which is the armor class rating that I actually prefer. This PDF kind of flips right to the next section a little bit faster than I would like. It has a jumpy feel to it, so I apologize for that. Encumbrances, optional rules, basic encumbrance, for the tournament rule, encumbrance and mounts. So they have various levels of encumbrance, and many of us generally apply an encumbrance rule. Your character shouldn't be able to just walk out of the dungeon carrying 20,000 coins of gold, or silver or anything like that. It's going to be far in excess of their encumbrance. But here we have a character strength, and then the level of encumbrance by weight that would include a maximum carrying weight. So the maximum carrying weight for somebody with an 18-100 strength is about 480 pounds, which is a tremendous amount of carrying capacity. And if you look at your average human, let's say your average human is between 10 and 11, their maximum capacity is about 110 pounds. And then modifier, like I said, it skips fast. The modifier for movement rate based on the amount of weight that you're carrying, and then your strength score based on it. So a quick cross-reference. Very nice artwork here. Just thought I'd focus a little bit on that. So carrying capacity for animals, storage capacity. All right, so now we go into magic. And the big change here, I think that, which I really like, is that as a wizard, as a wizard, you can focus on certain schools of magic. So although all wizards' spells are learned and memorized the same way, they fall into 9 different schools of magic. A school of magic is a group of related spells. So you have abjuration, you have alteration, you have conjuration and summoning, you have enchantment and charms, you have illusion, you have invocation and evocation, you have lesser divination spells, and necromancy. Learning spells. Whether a character chooses to be a mage or a specialist in one of the schools of magic, he must learn his spells from somewhere. While it might be possible for an exceptional wizard to learn the secrets of arcane lore entirely on his own, it is very unlikely. It is far more likely that your character was apprenticed to another wizard as a lad. This kindly, severe, loving, callous, understanding, ill-tempered, generous, mean-spirited, and upright, untrustworthy master taught your character everything he knows at the start of the game. Then, when it was time, the master sent him into the world, threw him out, with a smile and a pat on the back, snarling with his foot on the character's backside. Or perhaps your character studied at a proper academy for wizards, if your DM has such things. There he completed his lessons under the eye of a firm but patient tutor who was ready with praise and good work. But alas, your character's parents were impoverished and his studies had to end. All right. As you can see, there are a number of ways that your character might have learned his spells. The one good thing that comes from your character's studies is his initial spell book. All right, and so you'll go through some kind of a process. It's up to the DM how many spells the character starts off with in his or her spell book, and then and sometimes even what spells, or it might be randomly generated. And then each time the character goes up a level, he or she may learn new spells, might have to return to the mentor in order to be provided with these new spells or be retrained to up their level of spell use. And so, and that's something that I really like doing in my own campaigns, is I do like the process of a character having to return to their mentor, and that's not just for a magic user. That's virtually for every class, that they have to go back to their mentor in order to learn higher tricks of the trade. So flipping through here, let's see, we're still on to magic, and there's quite a lot, and they're going into the various differences. So pre-spells, now I call these favors because the power of spell use of a cleric is not with the cleric, but it's with the deity, and so the deity is granting favors to the cleric in order to cast these favors, which are called spells in the book here. So it's just a preference. It's I like to differentiate it. So casting spells. Both wizards and priests use the same rules for casting spells. To cast a spell, the character must first have the spell memorized. If it is not memorized, the spell cannot be cast. The caster must be able to speak, not under the effects of a silent spell or gagged, and have both arms free. Note that the optional spell component rule following section can modify these conditions. If the spell is targeted on a person, place, or thing, the caster must be able to see the target. It is not enough to cast a fireball 150 feet ahead into the darkness. The caster must be able to see the point of the explosion and intervening distance. Likewise, a magic missile, which always hits its target, cannot be fired into a group of bandits with the instruction to strike the leader. The caster must be able to identify and see the leader. Once the casting has begun, the character must stand still. Casting cannot be accomplished while riding a roughly moving beast or a vehicle, unless special efforts are made to stabilize and protect the caster. Thus, a spell cannot be cast from the back of a galloping horse under any conditions, nor can a wizard or priest cast a spell on the deck of a ship during a storm. However, if the caster were below decks, protected from the wind and surging waves, he can cast a spell. While it is not normally possible to cast a spell from a moving chariot, a character who was steadied and supported by others could do so. So just a bit of a limitation that the character must be fairly immobilized in order to cast their spells. Spell components, which is also an optional rule, and there are various components to casting spells. You have verbal, you have semantic, and then you have material. Not verbal, semantic. You have, let's see what they have here. So each spell, I forgot the other one now. That's weird. Semantic is verbal, obviously, and then there's the material, and then there's the motion, the hand gestures. Into verbal, semantic, gestures, and material. Well, semantic is gestures, all right. So I was right in the beginning. So experience points. Chapter 8. After a player character has bravely set out and survived his first adventures, the player will have experienced the entertainment of the role-playing games. But what will the character have gained? If the character never improves, he will never be able to survive, let alone overcome the powerful dangers that fill the AD&D game worlds. Fortunately, this isn't the case. Every time a character goes on an adventure, he learns something. He may learn a little more about his physical limits, encounter a creature he has never seen before, try a spell he has never used, or discover a new peculiarity of nature. Indeed, not all this learning experience needs to be positive. After blowing up half his party with a poorly placed fireball, a wizard may, though there is no guarantee, learn to pay more attention to the ranges and area of effects. After charging a basilisk, a fighter may learn that caution is a better tactic for dealing with the beast, and so on. So there's both a meta experience that they're talking about here, and then there's character experience, what the character is able to then improve upon. Group experience awards, training, individual experience awards, and where's the specific info? Let's take a look at that. So the preceding text has covered generally guidelines as to how and why characters receive experience points. Since the DM actually determines how many XP each character actually receives, the detailed rules for awarding experience are given in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So we'll spend a little bit more time with it there. I do recall one in here, or perhaps it was in the DM's guide that I was reading it, where you can say that your players' characters are receiving a general amount of experience, and then specific based on what actions they've actually done, so, and then you can tell them, well, you can only spend this experience towards a particular area. So let's say you have a multi-class character, because that's really where this comes into play, and they've gained 1,500 experience points, and let's say they were a fighter or thief, but all they had done was fighting. I could see as a DM saying, well, you're only going to get a portion of that you can apply to thieves' abilities and your thief level, and the remainder, 80% or more, would have to go towards fighting, and vice versa if you did, something differently there. And so, just based on your actions, unless you were really very close to 50-50, would they spread across as you see fit. So you might actually end up with a character leveling faster, not just because of the experience points per level for that particular class is different, but their actions might also impact that as well. So combat, Chapter 9, more than just hack and slash, armor class, and again, they still use descending here. I don't know when they started using ascending, probably in the 3rd edition, although once I get to covering the 3rd edition, I'll probably find out one way or the other. So, but here they still use descending. They use Thaco. All right, so this is the much maligned Thaco. So let's see where we get the... Thaco is an acronym for to hit armor class 0. This is a number a character, NPC, or monsters need to attack an armor class 0 target successfully. The Thaco depends on the character's group and level. See table 53. The Thaco number can be Used to calculate the number needed to hit any armor class. THAC0 is refigured each time a character increases in level. Using THAC0 speeds the play of combat greatly. At the heart of the combat system is the attack roll. This is the dice roll that determines whether an attack succeeds, fails. The number a player needs in order to make the successful attack roll is called the to-hit number. Attack rolls are used for attacks with swords, bows, rocks, and other weapons, as well as blows from fists, tackling, and other hand-to-hand attacks. Attack rolls are used to resolve a variety of potentially causing actions that require accuracy. And let's take a look at this chart, because they give an example there. There are strength modifiers, magic modifiers. So there's a number of modifiers, weapon type versus armor modifiers, which was something I really noticed, that different types of armor are affected by different types of weapons. So like I believe it was like Banded Mail gave a +2 against edged weapons, but only a +1 to the AC for blunt weapons. So, and I really like that. So combat modifiers: attacker on high ground, defender invisible, defender off balance, defender sleep or held, defender stunned or prone, defender surprised, missile fire long range, missile fire medium range, rear attack. If the defender is attacked during the course of his normal melee, the attack automatically hits, causing normal damage. That is for defender is sleeping or held. It's an automatic, which I skipped over that. So here's what I was talking about. Yeah, and I was correct. So that weapon type versus armor modifiers. So Banded Mail was a +2 to slashing damage and only a +1 to bludgeons. So actually I had that reversed. It was the armor is better protection versus slash than bludgeon, and so on. So you can get, so chainmail +2 against slash, but bludgeoning is a -2. So bludgeoning attacks will do more damage, or potentially do more damage, or hit more often against somebody wearing chainmail, and so on. So it's pretty interesting. I would probably use that, and I might even use that in a 1E situation as well, because I do like the fact that the armor is a little bit more varied in the type of protection that it grants. THAC0 advancement, improvement rate points per level. So a priest goes up 2 points every 3 levels, a rogue 1 every 2, a warrior 1 every 1, and a wizard 1 every 3. All right, so and then, oh, there's how you calculate it. So let's say a third level priest needs a 20 to hit AC 0, a rogue needs a 19, a warrior needs an 18, a wizard needs a 20. And as you can see, as they go up in level, it becomes easier and easier for them to hit armor class 0. Now, how you increase it, let's say the person has an armor class of 1, then it is 1 point higher, makes it easier to hit. If it's a AC 10, then it would be, essentially 10 points higher. So it would be much, much easier for them to hit a armor class of 10 rather than 0. We'll actually spend some time with the actual combat charts. Okay, so sorry, I got distracted with a email. Multiple attacks and initiative. Spellcasting and initiative. Attacking with 2 weapons. Tricky fighting style available only to warriors and rogues is that of fighting with 2 weapons simultaneously. The character chooses not to use a shield in favor of another weapon, granting him a greater number of attacks with penalty to his attack rolls. Rangers are exempt from the attack roll penalty. All right. When using a second weapon in his offhand, the character is limited in his weapon choice. His principal weapon can be whatever he chooses, provided it can be wielded with one hand. The second weapon must be smaller in size and weight than the character's main weapon, though a dagger can be used as a second weapon even if the primary weapon is a dagger. A fighter may use a long sword and a short sword, or a long sword and a dagger. He cannot use 2 long swords, nor can the character use a shield unless it is strapped to his back. I wonder if the character can use 2 short swords. I would argue that they could use 2 short swords, which is something I always do when I play my halfling characters, halfling warriors or halfling rogues. I will wield 2 short swords. Punching and wrestling. And overbearing. So this gets into, non-weapon combat, which I could probably spend a whole video on dealing with non-lethal and non-weapon combat or unarmed combat, but I'm not going to focus on that today. Firing into melee, cover and concealment modifiers. So you can see there are still a ton of rules here for 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, just like there were a ton of rules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 1st edition. The DM and in some cases the players can discuss and see what optional rules they are going to include and others that they're going to disregard. Same thing with the general rules as well. If the DM and the players, have a consensus that they don't want to use a particular rule, they don't have to. Chapter 9, we focus on saving throws and the various character levels by class, and then they get different saving throws based on levels, class, and later modified by racial traits as well. Turning Undead. I'm just kind of focusing on, so here you have your Turning Undead chart. Evil priests and undead. They can basically take control of them and command them instead. All right. Wounds, paralysis, energy drain, special damage, falling, Poison's healing, natural healing, magical, let's see, natural healing, blah. Let's skip. Characters heal naturally at a rate of 1 hit point per day of rest. Rest is defined as low activity, nothing more strenuous than riding a horse or traveling from one place to another. Fighting, running in fear, lifting a heavy boulder, or any other physical activity prevents resting since it strains old wounds and may even reopen. Excuse me. Or may even reopen them. If a character has complete bed rest, doing nothing for an entire day, he can regain 3 hit points for each day. So you don't have any of your 5e, 5th edition short rests and long rests where, you either recover massive amounts of hit points or all of your hit points on a long rest. Death from massive damage. All right, let's see if we just have character death. Yeah, let's deal with character death here. When a character reaches 0 hit points, the character is slain. The character is immediately dead and unable to do anything unless some specialized magic effect takes precedence. So that's pretty cut and dry. Boom, you hit 0, you're dead. Poison complicates the situation somewhat. A character who dies as a result of poisoning may still have active venom in his system. Poisons remain effective for 2d6 hours after the death of a victim. If the character is raised during this time, some method must be found to neutralize the poison before the character is restored to life. If this is not done, then after the character rolls the resurrection survival check as a given raise the dead later in the chapter, assuming the roll is successful, he must immediately roll a successful saving throw versus the poison or suffer all the effects of the poison in his body, as per the normal rules. This may only injure some characters, but it may kill other characters seconds after being raised. Death from massive damage. In addition to dying when hit points reach 0, a character also runs the risk of dying abruptly when he suffers massive amounts of damage. A character who suffers 50 or more points of damage from a single attack must roll a successful saving throw versus death or he dies. This applies only if the damage was done by a single attack. Multiple attacks totaling 50 points in a single round don't require the saving throw. For example, a character would be required to make a check if a dragon breath on him for 72 points of damage. He wouldn't have to do so if 8 orcs hit him for a total of 53 points of damage if successful. If the saving throw is successful, the character remains alive, unless of course 50 hit points also reduced his hit points to 0 or below. The saving throw fails, the character immediately dies from the intense shock his body has taken. His hit points are reduced to 0. The character may still be raised in normal ways, however. Inescapable death. There are occasions when death is unavoidable, no matter how many hit points a character has. A character could be locked in a room with no exits, with a 50-ton ceiling descending to crush him. He could be trapped in an escape-proof box filled completely with acid. These examples are extreme and extremely grisly, but they could happen in a fantasy world. Raising the dead, curative and healing spells have no effect on the dead character. He can only be returned to life with a raise the dead or a resurrection spell, or a device that accomplishes one of these effects. Each time a character is returned to life, the player must make a resurrection survival roll based on the current constitution. If the die roll is successful, the character is restored to life in whatever condition is specified by the spell or device. A character restored to life in this way has his constitution permanently lowered by 1 point. This can affect hit points previously earned. Should the character's constitution bonus go down, the character's hit points total is reduced by the appropriate number of hit points. When a character's constitution drops to 0, the character can no longer be raised. He is permanently removed from play. If you also have a system where you're using this and the character class has a prerequisite of Constitution, you might actually lose your class abilities as well. I'm not going to spend very much time on treasure because it's not going to be very much different than what was in the previous editions. Vision and light. And so you have various effects of visibility and light on your character, how far they can see in certain conditions, and then light sources and how far those light sources can penetrate. Time and movement. Base movements for each of the character races. And as you can see, we've only gone through like 160 pages so far of 322. There is still quite a bit to go here. So climbing modifiers. Either first edition AD&D or second edition AD&D isn't something where you're going to read through the rule books and then, immediately start playing before a good portion of those rule books have been read. So, this is not something that, hey, I just bought this game, I come home and we're going to start playing it right away. It's going to take the DM and the players in some cases to, do a bit of reading and, just get a sense of their characters and some of the basic systems that they're going to be utilizing. And then you can learn as you go. But, but this is not like basic D&D, whether it's old basic D&D or the new version of, the basic D&D, 5e, where, it takes you a half an hour to read the book and then you can jump right into, playing your session, virtually that same day. I'm just scrolling through all of these different appendice items. Mostly it's spells, and I'm sure magic items will come a little bit later. Wizard spells, spells, lots of spells. Priest spells. They give you the spell types by sphere, which again, I really like that if you are going to focus. And then here we come to the end. So as you can see, first edition, some others they keep fairly pretty much the same. Still very, very in-depth as in-depth as you want to make it. So if you do include all of those optional rules, this is a very crunchy system. If you want to eliminate some of those, or you can streamline this a little bit more so, and I think a little bit easier than first edition. But I mean, the system really looks like it would be a lot of fun to play. It certainly shows some improvements on first edition, and I'm certainly looking forward to to playing some and to running some Advanced Dungeons and Dragons second edition, in the coming days or weeks to come. I am looking to start a new AD&D campaign, which is a single player. We might even have a session 0 today, and what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to convince him maybe we can use at least some components of second edition. That way I get some comfortableness in using it, and then do a full-blown second edition campaign down the road with a number of players. So certainly looking forward to putting this to use. I'm waiting on because yes, I did jump through jump down the rabbit hole, and I am picking up some more of the splat books for second edition. So I'm already beyond the core 3 books now, as yesterday I picked up the player options, combat and tactics. I have the other 2 player option books on their way, and now I'm eyeballing some of the class handbooks. So once I get those, I'll be well on my way to almost completing my collection of second edition as well. As I said, it's always a different, it's always a challenge for me once I start collecting something to limit myself to just the core. And second edition looks like the kind of game system that I would really enjoy, and so that's just not going to happen. So once again, thanks for joining. I hope you liked this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the... If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Again, when you subscribe and you're leaving comments and telling me, hey, go take a look at this or that, or go back over this, because your comments can say, hey, you know what, you got this a little bit wrong. These are first looks and flip-throughs. So yes, I'm not going to have the rules, directly, accurate. That's not what this is for. This is this type of a video is to kind of show you out there, if you've never looked through second edition or any of the game systems that I'm taking a look at. It's meant to be an unscripted and unchained first look at a system, and if I'm picking up correctly on something, then most likely someone else viewing these would pretty much do the same thing, perhaps have the same interpretation as I do. But it also gives the opportunity for people to come in and to correct me if I'm mistaken or I've misinterpreted something. So that's what the purpose of this channel really is. And I appreciate those of you that have subscribed. I encourage others to subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon, because that's the other aspect of this channel that I really like to do, is I like to use this as a way to bring people into my games should they wish to join in. And I've actually played with a number of people who started out as just commenters on my channel here. So once again, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. As always, I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. You'll have a great rest of your day. Take care.